with an army of supermen millions strong. Because that is Vought's true destiny. And you will be the man who will lead us. You are everything that we dreamed of.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This is going to be my video for The Boys Season 2, Episode 6. Stormfront and Frenchie would like to dedicate this episode to the Golden Girls. Thank you for being a friend. So if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. We'll do a new Amazon giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave your favorite crazy moment from the episode on the video. Obviously, careful for spoilers from Episode 6 if you haven't seen it yet. We'll do top 10 WTF and comic book Easter eggs as we go along. There were a lot of comic book Easter eggs. Just starting with number 10, the title of the episode. The title is The Bloody Doors Off, as in blow the freaking doors off. It's actually a comic book reference to the title of the very final volume of The Boys comic, Volume 12. That's the end of the story. There are some Easter eggs for things that happen during that they do set up and tease during the episode, but mostly the plot of the final volume of the comic book is very different from what they actually did in the episode. It's also a reference to the doors of the mental hospital being blown off their hinges literally by the new supers that Vought created. We get a great flashback opening the episode with Frenchie and his former girlfriend just evangelizing the Golden Girls, setting up the theme that they tag at the end of the episode too. He is a hardcore Golden Girls fan. He and Deadpool would get along. He just explains that when he first came to the United States, he spent a lot of time watching their show in his free time, and the lesson that he learned from them was that just like their group, he made his own family. That's also a metaphor for the Boys team. They become like a family. There is a cool contrast in the episode between that really wholesome idea that Frenchie has and the creepy cult vibes that both the Deep and Stormfront give off when they're trying to espouse the same type of sentiment. So number 9, Starlight and Huey in their relationship versus Homelander and Stormfront in their relationship, or their super toxic relationship. Frenchie's removing Starlight's tracking device from her neck. They joke about Huey being in love with her, but they try to keep their relationship on the DL. They are the most wholesome couple on the show, which is a really nice contrast to the next scene of Homelander and Stormfront going on a really dark superhero date in the alleyway, while they do it on top of the corpse of the criminal that they torture then kill, as if that's foreplay while they're slowly getting ready to do it. Whoever edited this episode and chose the song list deserves an award. The soundtrack was amazing. Number 8, Starlight joins the Boys formally. So Kimiko bonds with Starlight immediately just because she remembers how much she helped her in the previous episodes. But Butcher and Starlight's bonding just takes the entire episode. Takes a little bit longer for him to come around on her. One of the big themes of the episode between the different character groups is finding common ground, like between Frenchie and Lamplighter, then Butcher and Starlight, between Homelander and Stormfront. Each person hated the other on some deep fundamental level because of some perceived or actual past tragedy, but by the end of the episode, each of their relationships does a full 180. Butcher starts out the episode wanting to use Starlight as bait for Vought, chum for shark-infested waters, as he says. The Deep also tries to come back to, quote-unquote, his old family, to the Seven. What, I need an excuse to visit my friends? He is the worst James Bond ever. As a lot of you suspected, Maeve's plan for him was to have him go to the bottom of the ocean and use his powers to get fish to look for the black box, which he did not find, but instead did find a GoPro with the footage that she needed. Then number 7, probably one of the funniest storylines from the episode, the Deep tries to bring A-Train into his cult. Would you like a fresca? Suddenly everyone's turning around and running in the opposite way. Anytime you see a fresca, you know that shit is about to go down. They even follow up with a really creepy moment with Stormfront from their last encounter. Obviously she's super racist. I feel like that's super obvious. They brought back Goran Visnich's character as the leader of that creepy church. He had a much bigger scene in this episode, and I know a lot of you wondered about the Timeless cameos. There were a bunch of actors from the Timeless TV series that showed up in previous episodes. The reason that happened is because the showrunner of The Boys was also the showrunner of the Timeless TV show, so he's just bringing back actors that he used to work with on other TV shows. I hope there's some big payoff with that Fresca joke by the end of the season. Like, they say that there's some sort of additive that the church puts in it, like the church owns the Fresca brand. But actually, I think Coca-Cola owns Fresca. Either way, it's hilarious. The church knows everything about A-Train, and they're going to hold it over him, and they kind of blackmail him into either joining or at least helping them with their purpose, because they want to get people inside the Seven, inside Vought. That's their whole thing. They just want more power too, just like Vought wants more power and wants to get people in the White House. Number 6, all the Frenchie flashbacks and the origin of the boys. So we get a ton of flashbacks in this episode. Obviously, most of them are focused on Frenchie's character. He's probably one of the biggest characters this week. But we see Frenchie meeting Mallory for the very first time after he gets caught at that bank robbery that they talked about, and she's completely impressed with his quote-unquote chemist abilities to create all kinds of weapons to neutralize superheroes, because obviously she's the leader of the boys and they're taking down superheroes left and right, so they need someone with his ingenuity. They make a bunch of references to Marvel and DC characters, so when they talk about Frenchie taking down Behemoth with the giant Xanax bomb to neutralize his rage powers, obviously that's a Marvel reference to Avengers and the Hulk. The madder he gets, the stronger he gets. Cue all the memes. Sun's getting real low, buddy. They mention Cold Snap, who's probably their version of Captain Cold. Malchemical, that she name drops, probably sounds like their version of Chemo from the DC universe. But number 5, the boys versus Sage Grove. So there is so much stuff going on at Sage Grove here. You have a couple different storylines that sort of collide while they're trying to break into that mental hospital. You have all the stuff that's going on between Butcher and Starlight, but then you have the actual Sage Grove story. They find out that the whole reason why Vought is experimenting on these people isn't to create more terrorists, it's actually to try and normalize Compound V so that they can actually give it to adults safely. So this is actually a big comic book Easter egg. The way it works in the comics is that it's actually so unstable that when you give it to adults, they either explode, like Lamplighter says, or they actually get powers, but most of the time, like 9 times out of 10, they explode. And Compound V costs billions of dollars to manufacture, so that's why there are so few superheroes, because you have to give it to children, it's expensive to manufacture, and most of the people that take it wind up dying. While they're busy running around learning about Sage Grove inside, Butcher and Starlight have it out, and she basically tells them, "You're no better than Homelander. You're just as big of a crapbag as he is," and she's not wrong. They were trying to be very clear when they set that up the first couple of episodes with him crossing the line and the whole theme with him and Huey. Obviously, he comes back from the brink, so I think the message you're left with at the end of the episode is that Butcher still is fundamentally a good person. He wants to be good, but they do kind of leave you with the question that, maybe he will eventually cross the line at some point, just like Homelander eventually might cross a line with Stormfront. I'll talk about them in a second too, because that's part of a much bigger storyline. But while they're busy breaking into the compound and they find out about all these superheroes, they have a couple really big comic book Easter eggs, some of them more funny in a crazy way than others. So they do love Sausage from the comic book. He's Russian, just like he is in the comic, but it seems like the TV show killed him off pretty quickly, so I'm guessing he's not going to be a huge character in future episodes. You all know exactly what Love Sausage is a reference to now, if you didn't before. I'll give you one guess as to what his power was. There's a couple more Marvel Avengers and DC Justice League references with the powers in these different cells. There's one with super strength, there's one with Ant-Man shrinking powers, there's one who spits acid, then the one that escapes at the end of the episode after getting roasted by Stormfront, I believe Cindy was her name, she has telekinesis and either super strength or she just has really strong skin that the bullets don't pierce. They also find out that Lamplighter is kind of like Vought's cleanup man now that he's been kicked off the Seven, just getting rid of all the evidence. So what happens here is as they test these different patients, when they're done with them, they just incinerate them, so I'm assuming that they have some grand scheme to cover up their identities so that nobody goes looking for them. But number 4, obviously one of the biggest parts of the episode, Lamplighter explained. So obviously you recognize him, he's a parody of Green Lantern in the comics. They also try to turn him into a bit of a parody of the Pyro character, which is more of an Easter egg for his X-Men movie days and X-Men The Last Stand. I love that his lighter says titties on it, like they want you to think that he's a terrible person, but most of what he tells you in the episode makes you think that he's actually kind of a good person. You get a pretty good sense for what he's like in that moment when Kimiko winds up saving him from the acid superhero, who then winds up accidentally burning his own face off. But the big deal with Lamplighter is that he used to be a member of the Seven. They kicked him off after the big incident with Mallory's children in order to prevent an all-out war with the CIA. But the way Lamplighter explains it, he didn't mean to kill her children. She was the one that was supposed to be in that bed. So he feels really remorseful about it, and he's been tearing himself up ever since. So Frenchie's process of working it out with Lamplighter also sort of helps his relationship with Kimiko. She's going to come around eventually, but obviously by the end of the episode, he sort of apologizes to her. Sorry, you didn't need saving. You didn't ask to be saved. They've kind of been teasing a relationship between the two of them. They might wind up paying that off by the end of the season. You also learn a whole bunch more about Frenchie in these flashbacks with Lamplighter too. So it turns out one of the reasons why he's been tormenting himself this whole time and why the group sort of torments him is because they think that he let Lamplighter get away with it. Why didn't you stop me? Then he reveals that the reason why he didn't do that is because he wasn't there when it actually happened, because he left to go help his friends. As messed up as their backstory is, there are a couple funny moments too, like when Mother's Milk is talking about getting engaged to his girlfriend in the flashbacks, then Frenchie just demands to throw him a bachelor party. Let me tell you about the strippers that I'm going to bring to this crazy bachelor party. They also pull no punches when making fun of a lot of the Pyro X-Men characters when Lamplighter walks in. They all just start breaking into laughter openly just because he looks so ridiculous. That's them just making fun of all those classic X-Men films, especially X-Men The Last Stand. But then number 3, big WTF, Starlight finally kills someone in cold blood. So she just winds up getting that random dude on the side of the road, pushing her in a darker and darker direction, making her feel like she's more like Butcher. This is also a bit of a comic book Easter egg. In the comics, Starlight does eventually wind up joining the boys, helping them out the way she did in this episode, in just the same way that Huey starts out as this really pure person at the beginning of the series. Starlight started out as this really religious person. She seemed like such a good girl. Then through her actions and the actions of the others around her, like the Seven and the boys, she becomes darker and darker and darker and just gets used to all the things that they're doing, the same way that Butcher has gotten so used to being so hardcore. I do love the way that she and Butcher bond by the end of the episode, standing over Huey by making fun of him, like the little kid shampoo that he uses and all the just weird things that he does during the day. Then number 2, big WTF, obviously the mental patients on Compound V all escaping and just going crazy in the hospital. Mother's Milk gets himself a taste of that old love sausage, which despite being super traumatized based on all the flashbacks, Frenchie still manages to make fun of later in the episode. Stormfront comes in, kills pretty much everyone, thinks that she kills the Cindy character who then escapes at the end of the episode, will probably come back around wanting some revenge against Stormfront. So there are a bunch of people that are out for Stormfront's blood now, including Kimiko. But the real number 1 WTF is obviously Stormfront's true history and her secret grand plans that she reveals to Homelander. So remember the theme that I talked about in the episode. She and Homelander are a little bit more like A-Train in the Deep than they are like Huey in Starlight. She's part of a really sinister organization, even though that organization died off a long time ago. An evil organization with a grand plan that's trying to rope in new members, so she tries to kind of brainwash Homelander into her cause. But she reveals that she was born in 1919 in Berlin. You also notice that she dips into her German accent too. She just learned over the years how to hide that, so she talks with an American accent most of the time. But she is 101 years old in present day. She was the first person, she says, to survive Vought's initial Compound V testing and became the first real superhero in Germany during World War II. This is them doing the actual Stormfront comic book plot with a couple minor changes. She says that she eventually got married to Vought, they had a child together, and that's the woman in the picture with her, that old woman that people think is her grandmother. No, this is my daughter. She died a couple years ago. But after World War II, when they came to the US through Operation Paperclip, they hid her identity, then many years later rebranded her as the Liberty superhero in the 60s and the 70s, probably after Vought had died of old age. She goes into full villain monologue like a true Nazi about her plan to cleanse the world, quote-unquote, and dominate with an army of supers created by Vought, led by none other than Homelander, because he is their ultimate achievement that they've been working for, the reason why they've been doing all this testing all these years. And I think it's a bit of a twist on a comic book Easter egg talking about Volume 12, The Bloody Doors Off, which the episode gets its title from, whether or not Homelander is really as terrible as people think that he is. There's still 2 more episodes this season. I really want to see if Stormfront's going to survive to season 3 because there's still so much comic book story they haven't got to yet. Also, really big news. Yesterday, they just announced that they're doing a spin-off series for The Boys about their in-universe version of what you would call the Young Avengers, pretty much. So just imagine Young Avengers, Teen Titans references on that series. They didn't say when it would premiere, but I'm assuming 2022. Either way, if you spotted any of the big Easter eggs or references in the episode that I didn't mention in the video, just write them below in the comments. In my video for The Boys Season 2 Episode 7 video we'll post next Friday, they also just announced a Suicide Squad TV show coming to HBO in the next couple of years with John Cena's character from the new Suicide Squad movie, so I will do a teaser video for that later today. Everyone click here for that brand new Avengers Wandavision trailer, and click here for The Boys Season 2 Episode 5. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe. I'll see you guys tonight.